bodybuilding is essentially a cult sport. The followers that are involved in it, they're fans of it themselves. They don't do it for monetary value. They do it because they enjoy it.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the SuperSetYourLife.com podcast. This is your weekly dose of entertainment, education, and inspiration to fuel your life inside and beyond the gym. This is part 2 of our interview with the carnivore bodybuilder himself from the United Kingdom, Jonathan Griffiths. Before we jump into that, I am asking you to please share this show if part 1 impacted you and if you found it helpful. We've been getting a lot of positive feedback, so I know it's been helping a lot of people out. In this episode, we're going to get deeper into the mentality of the carnivore diet, how to use it for bodybuilding, why it works so well, why I love it, why he loves it, where we're going with it, how we think in a lot of ways it could really be the future of bodybuilding. And so if you haven't listened to episode 83 of our show and heard Jonathan's story, then go back and listen to that one first. I think you're really going to like it if you haven't already. Okay, so yeah. Please share the show, guys, if it's something that you're finding value in. To hold myself accountable to that, I'm not going to ask you to do something that I wouldn't be willing to do myself. So earlier today, I found to be a bit of a pick-me-up the show, the Dynamic Lifestyle Podcast, and might be a little bit biased on these guys, but these are actually our coaches. We are we are clients of them for life. I just got an opportunity to meet them in Dallas in person after working with them for several months now and having been consuming their podcasts and reading all their books, studying their books. I've learned basically everything about how I conduct online business from them. I've been referring clients to them, and we don't get any kickback off of it. This is just because they're the real deal. Chris and Eric Martinez, they are awesome. They are great at what they do. So just wanted to give a huge shout out to somebody that's been super impactful in the lives of Taylor and me. It was actually her idea to hire them as our coaches in the first place too. So definitely not looking back on that. But the episode that they published just today was on how to pick yourself up when you're not really feeling motivated about working out, about life. And it's just an episode on positivity. And so it was a really good one. It was super short and quick. But they have a couple episodes every week. And so over all the shows that I've done, that's something that has really helped me through my shows and seeing the big picture. Okay, why am I even doing this? Oh, yeah, and to see like where I'm going with this and everything. So cannot recommend that show enough. The Dynamic Lifestyle Podcast. You can find it on all podcast platforms. Right. Now we have 2 customer reviews. This one, actually, I want to give a huge shout out to a customer of ours that has been purchasing supplements and one of our cable attachments. And he's just an all-around really great guy. He won the NPC Vancouver Open last weekend here where I live. I was out of town, so I wasn't able to go watch him. Otherwise, I totally would have been supporting him. I was out building my business in Montana. But he took the overall. And I met this guy 6 years ago. We actually had him on our podcast because his transformation was so dramatic. But I met him like when he was just starting his fitness journey, and I certainly wasn't judging him, but I would have never, ever expect him to be somebody that would win the Open of a huge show like that in Vancouver, Washington. So he lost a ton of pounds for his last show that he did last year, which was the Emerald Cup. And this year, seeing his physique, it's absolutely amazing what this guy has done. So anyway, he was nice enough to purchase a Skullbellz cable attachment from us. And he said, love my Skullbellz cable attachment. I take it to the gym every single time that I go. I never use an upper body. I never hit an upper body workout without using it. So it means a lot, bro. Thanks so much. And every time I see this guy, it's just, he's nothing but positivity, you know. I mean, he's going through obstacles and through tribulations in his life, just like everybody else is. But he always has a positive outlook. He's always encouraging. And if you listen to the episode that we did, that was like, I don't know, probably 20-25 episodes ago, you'll get a real feel for his personality and how motivating of a dude this guy is. So you definitely should follow him. It is at Frankie Arcega. I will put a link to his Instagram in the show notes. All right. And then the other customer review is actually going to be a Buff and Sherry Norman. We go back about a year ago when you'll hear about it in the conversation we have. But yeah, I'm just going to play the audio. All right, here you guys go.
I think for me, it's kind of a two-part. I mean, yes, I love the workout. It's wonderful. I enjoy just changing things up every month and just being able to work out with my husband also. But also the fellowship. I just think being together and just, spending time talking while we're working out. I think it's kind of a two-part thing for me.
Yeah, I think it's, for me, some new exercises, some new things, expanding the repertoire, so to speak, the tool drawer of learning some different techniques, different exercises, different ways to do stuff after having kind of dabbled with weightlifting for most of my life. And that's been educational. It's been good to see Colt's teaching on that.
Appreciate it. Yeah, it's funny how it all started about a year ago. Went over to your guys' house to coach you through a workout plan, and that was pretty much it. And then it just evolved into you inviting me to your guys' church, which has been the single most important reason that God brought us to the Vancouver area, was for the church community. And it's just been great seeing you guys every Sunday whenever you're in town and not on a flight. And time study, and just having you guys over for dinner. I mean, the fellowship, just like, we really love you guys and respect you guys and look up to you a lot. And I think that's one of the serendipities as a coach in this business, is that the people and the relationships that we get to build is really valuable. So you guys are real close, real special friends of ours, and every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock is definitely a highlight in our week that you guys come over and we get to do this. Appreciate you guys. Thanks for everything you do. Thanks for coming over, and it's been a lot of fun. All right, Buff and Sherry, thank you so much for that. It's been a lot of fun, and looking forward to our next workout next week. For those of you that are listening, you can text 206-743-1346. Text the word coaching for coaching inquiries. That number again is 206-743-1346. We'll put that in the show notes, as well as a link to be able to schedule a 15-minute phone consultation with Taylor and myself. With that, let's get into the interview with Mr. Jonathan Griffiths. Part 2. Let's go. Would you mind if we talked about why you started the carnivore diet, and whether it was more for health or mentality, or like, did you ever struggle with any eating disorders, and was that kind of a remedy for that? I mean, why carnivore? What brought you to that?
I just realized I've got a ferocious appetite, pretty much. I can eat a lot of food. Like, I do most food challenges and beat the records, sort of thing. I did find when I was dieting before that I wasn't getting much nutrient quality. So my hair was like falling out faster, my nails were getting bad, my skin was getting really dry and horrible. So ultimately it just became more of a health thing and like well-being. As time went on, I just thought increase meat a bit more. Now I just have such a much more varied diet. So I used to have a diet which consisted of about 5 or 6 foods. It's basically chicken, bread, ice cream, cheese. It's like bland, pale, white, yellow sort of foods. And I was diagnosed about 5 years ago now with autistic spectrum disorder. And I found that this sort of diet has definitely alleviated a lot of the issues around that. That's similar for a few people online. There's not many, but I believe there's it's called the Autistic Carnivores on the Meat Mosaic podcast. They speak about that sort of same thing as well.
What's the name of that show?
Meat Mosaic.
Meats Mosaic.
I think it's got someone called Thomas and Justin on it.
Really? That's one that I'm going to be looking up, and I'll put it in the show notes when I do. That really just sparked my interest, because our son, he's not diagnosed autistic. They don't diagnose this anymore, but we're thinking that he probably has Asperger's, I believe is the name of this condition, to where he's just has a hard time communicating. I would describe my son as being, he's 4 years old. I would describe him as being the intelligence of a 6-year-old, and the emotional maturity of someone that's not quite 4 yet. Super smart, does things that I can't that I do not see other 4-year-olds doing, like what he does with Legos, his creativity. He's extremely gifted in a lot of areas, and we all have things that we're gifted at and things that we're a little more behind in and tend to struggle with. But we have noticed that when he is low carbs, we're not malnourishing him. We're feeding him a lot of food, a lot of good food, but he does the best when he's not eating any carbs at all, when he's getting a lot of fats, a lot of good animal meats, because as you know, fats are a cleaner source of brain fuel than carbs are. And that's one of the first things I notice when I am out of ketosis and when I'm consuming carbs or consuming sugar is my mental clarity is the first thing to go. And that's kind of what sucks, like even more than the gym performance. It's like I'm not as creative. I can't study as much. Like my prayer life, my spiritual life isn't as good. I mean, just everything kind of goes backwards. And I remember why I like eliminating carbs so much. And that's one of the big reasons. But I've heard a number of people report that they have better cognitive abilities on the carnivore diet. So it's really cool to hear you share some of the same thing. And I mean, you've probably noticed this about me. Like I'm kind of ADD, but like I literally am. I mean, like all throughout high school, like if it's something that wasn't interesting to me, man, it was game over. Like I could not concentrate on it. Like I would be listening to a teacher talk and teach something, and I'm looking at her and I'm hearing what she's saying. Yeah, I'm hearing what she's saying, and I think I'm paying attention. Like mentally, I think I'm paying attention, and I'm like taking notes. And then 5 minutes later, I'm like, I have no idea what she just said.
Yeah, I've noticed the same thing with even memory. You can test all these things nowadays, like from your phone. I think my working memory is about 8 or 9 things when I'm on a carnivore diet. When I'm not, it's 4 or 5. And I think 5 or 6 is about the average for most people. So it's nearly doubled my working memory of amount of things I can remember at once, which is sometimes quite useful. But yeah, I'd say the mood benefit is probably the most prominent thing. People with autistic spectrum disorders, they tend to have gut issues as well. So issues with gut permeability, they'll often get gastroenteritis, things of that nature. And it's paired with so many other conditions. It'd quite shock you if you looked at the statistics on a lot of these things. The important thing is you can realize if you follow, an ancestrally appropriate diet, then a lot of those problems are alleviated.
We had a gentleman, I want to say 20 or 30 episodes ago, I'm going to find it right now on our show, that was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and the carnivore diet has been reversing his Alzheimer's. You believe that?
Amyloid plaque buildup. Yeah,
his name's...
Yeah, unfortunately, they've not really done enough studies on that, but I would speculate that's very much why.
This is all anecdotal. He talks all about it on episode 31 of our show.
I'll have to look at that one. Yeah, thanks.
Completely relate to you on the appetite control. That's the biggest reason that drew me to the carnivore diet too, is because I have an appetite that will not stop. I will eat even on my refeed days. My coach was just like, he didn't know what to do with me, man, because I was on a traditional, very, very good coach, very, very healthy approach to bodybuilding, very much health first, using a high carb approach. And there are a number of our athletes that I train that I still use these same macros with, because I don't think the carnivore diet is right for everybody. I really don't. I think that a lot of people are better off with carbs. But the carnivore diet is just kind of our specialty, and it's what works best for me. But the macros that he had me using were, mostly high carbs and sweet potatoes. I found sweet potatoes to be more satiating than any other kind of carbs, and they're my favorites. but I would knock out on a carb load day 1,200, 1,300 grams of carbs within a couple hours. And I could keep going, man. I mean, like, it wouldn't even fill me up. Like, I'd be eating vegetables just so I could be full, and I would spill over. I spilled over before on show day, and it sucked because I was in the best shape of my life. and you overdo it. That's the other nice thing about the carnivore diet too, with bodybuilding, is like, now I'm never worried about spilling over, but you can do it if you're not careful. And, yeah, no, like if I'm eating carbs, like I literally can't stop. If I eat meat, I'm still sad when I eat my last bite, but at least it's more controllable than
your masseters and your jaw will start to ache if you're eating too much. You're like, I can't eat much for it, just hurts. Like,
Yeah. This is hilarious, man. I mean, like I'm still blown away. I'm like, we have so much in common. I mean, like the bodybuilding mindset, outlook, and just the reason for coming to the carnivore diet. And so, okay, so basically, you came to the carnivore diet because you wanted a better way to control your appetite. That was your biggest draw to it. It was the same for me. And then you got to a point where you're like, I wonder if it's possible to do this and be a bodybuilder.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. And I always thought, like mentioned earlier, the 40-40-20 sort of macro split. That's something I never really understood. I was like, why don't you just do more of one thing than the other? Why is it, this idea of balance doesn't make much sense to me. I'm paraphrasing here from Bart K Nutrition I mentioned earlier, but the idea of balance is all about good things and fairies and unicorns and equilibrium. But the reality is we didn't survive as a species through consistent feeding of protein, carbs, and fats. Not often in nature do carbs and fats appear in the same food. I think one example might be nuts, maybe, but other than that, everything is strictly, starch or sugar or obviously fat based. So I think it's not really appropriate for a lot of people, especially in the amounts they're recommending. The dietary advice suggests something like 66 grams of sugar in my country, and I think around 250 grams of carbohydrates. And I think surely be better just having that before healthy fat source. 250. Say you're eating 3 meals a day, 250 grams of olive free. That's still 80 plus grams of carbohydrates per meal. That's a lot for like an 18-year-old man to eat. That's a big bowl of cereal sort of thing. Like 3 times a day, every single day. The idea of balance just doesn't seem suitable.
Mm-hmm. We were talking a little earlier about different resources that we've used to become educated on the carnivore diet, as both of us have become carnivores the last couple of years. 2 of your favorites are also 2 of my favorites, which are the ancestral and indigenous diet. I think I said that correctly. I'll put a link to that in the show notes. And the Carnivore Diet by Sean Baker. To my knowledge, neither of those books talk about macros. Like, it shows you what is in the foods in the back of the book, I believe, in the appendix of the Carnivore Diet. But there's nothing that I'm aware of that really teaches how to optimize macronutrient ratios on the carnivore diet. So is that something that you found by purely experimentation and just figuring out what works best for you?
Yeah, I'd say entirely for experimentation. I found, there's a certain fat requirement I need, like just a pure energy requirement to function day to day. And I scale up and down the protein depending on what my output is. I almost use that as like the glucose arrangement sort of thing. Sorry, could you repeat your question?
Oh, yeah, I was just curious if you've, because I'm not aware of any resources like Robert Sykes, right? In his book, he spells out. That's why I keep sending him so much free merchandise and stuff, because he puts everything out for free. Can you believe that? I mean, this guy has mastered the ketogenic diet. for natural low carb bodybuilding. I mean, he is the Arnold Schwarzenegger of that particular topic. I mean, you talk about a guy that has completely mastered something that he specializes in, and that's something that he's gifted in. That's him. And he gives all this content out for free, you know, and it was like, so much of what I do and what I know is from him. And like, I've never paid him a dime for coaching or anything, you know? And so like, he's just such a good guy and someone I have so much respect for. And so
I agree with that for sure. So the bodybuilding is essentially a cult sport. The followers that are involved in it, they're fans of it themselves. They don't do it for monetary value. They do it because they enjoy it. So I think
that's what I love about this sport. And you know what else is like that is the low carb community. Like even aside from bodybuilding, it's like people that are low carb tend to have each other's back. It's like it's almost like they'll do anything for each other. You know, I had the inventor of the BioSense breath ketone monitor on our show. It's like, I'm nothing to him, you know. It's like, did he get any value from being on our show? No, that was like 30 episodes ago, you know, like we were tiny back then. And it's like somebody like that to give us his time. It's like, that's the kind of culture that you're describing that you see not only in bodybuilding, but also in the low carb community too. And because a lot of this stuff is new and it's emerging, you know, and so it's like, it's super contradictive to all the vegetarian bullshit that you're seeing that the media really pushing. And so I think that, you know, you're around people that really care and you're around people that really have a passion about this, and science is emerging and really bringing a lot of this stuff out. And I think people, we get excited because we're just all passionate about it. When you combine bodybuilding and low carb, I think you really see that even more.
I think there's a lot of benefits to be had, as we've mentioned throughout this. So I used to work in a health food shop and used to manage several people. I found it is a vegetarian-based store. The amount of people I had that come in with issues that followed the vegetarian diet was horrific. But the thing is, they were so excluded from the idea that maybe it was their diet that was causing all these health issues. There's always gut issues, brain issues, like sleep, because their blood glucose is always all over the place. They can't regulate themselves properly. And it just frustrated me because I thought it's just going on and on and on, like continuously, the same ailments every single time. I'm talking about probably hundreds of people, if not thousands. So it's become more popular in this country, and I think there's not really much argument to support the vegetarian ideology, other than perhaps you just don't like eating meat.
Yeah.
But then you have to argue, you know, are you a human, or are you a diplodocus or something, or a hippo, or, you know, it's like a herbivorous animal. But there's not really any arguments. I mean, I don't really get into arguments with people about that online, because I think you just let them follow their own path and eventually they'll get to where they need to be. Because ultimately you're going to do what's best for your own health. And I think a lot of people find this way of eating, especially with the new research that's coming out, to be more beneficial.
Yeah. I think one of the questions we need to ask ourselves too is, are humans designed to be meat eaters or strictly plant eaters, right? And we can get into a whole discussion about that, about history and archaeology and like how our teeth are designed and everything. But it's like, you know, compare us to a dog. It's like, my dog has a ton of energy, a lot of energy. And guess what? We never, ever feed her carbs. Yep. And she's twice as big as she was a few weeks ago. No carbs, all meat. Can you believe that?
That's the same thing's true with predators that are, you know, obviously carnivorous animals. They've got short digestive systems. They're not, they don't have polygastric chambers, so they're just, you know, one stomach, one set of intestines, I think. Obviously, it's smaller and larger. But there's just so many adaptations that we have which suggest that we are, you know, protein, fat-based animals. There's even something called an N15 carbon isotope data set. So this is where archaeologists have taken human long bones from around the world, various different places. It's not geographic specific, it's all over the world. And from that, they can identify what their diet was based on how their bone marrow was formed. And what they identified was it is predominantly a meat-based diet. So meat and animal fat, organs, things of that nature. Very, very rarely did they happen to see anything suggesting the opposite. And even then, it is a matter of needs, like what was available in the environment at that particular time, not so much what was ideal or most suitable and appropriate for that particular species.
Yeah, Sean Baker in his book talks all about the indigenous tribes in Alaska, and some of the longest lifespans in the world are in Hong Kong, and they eat more red meat than just about anybody.
By several times over. That's in there. That graph's good. Yeah, and it shows a clear sort of correlation. Obviously, it's associative data. Obviously, in Hong Kong is very different to China. They've got a very different culture. If you went to the outside of Hong Kong into the main China, the diet would be predominantly rice and noodles, so high carb, high fat, whereas much higher protein in the Japanese and Hong Kong cultures.
Yeah, I have that study bookmarked here. It's on page 65 in the carnivore diet. It's comparing the highest longevity rates in years of women and men in Hong Kong. For women, it's 87 years, and for men, it's 81 years. And that's more than just about any other country. It looks like Spain, South Korea, and France are a little ahead as far as women are concerned. But as far as the amount of kilograms of meat per capita, Hong Kong is by far the highest. I mean, how do you argue that?
Yeah, you can't really argue it. And I think as time goes on, we get more people like ourselves that follow this kind of diet. Is that are you familiar with telomeres?
I'm not.
So I studied genetics in my nutrition course, and basically the end of DNA, like the spiral double helix sort of thing, there's something called a telomere, and when you're born it's a certain length, and as you age it gets shorter and shorter. So it'll be interesting to see is if they measured the telomere length of people on a carnivorous diet versus a vegetarian based diet, then you could actually see cause and effect, the effect of meat consumption on aging. I would not be surprised if they had longer telomeres in the animal-based diet.
Absolutely. Have you ever tried the ketogenic diet? Have you ever tried just like I think most people, when they get into the carnivore diet, there's kind of a progression. You start with standard American diet, and you're like, okay, this doesn't work. Let's try eliminating some foods. And then you go paleo, and then you eliminate a little bit further, and then you go keto, and then you eliminate a little bit further and just go straight carnivore. But did you just like go straight carnivore? Have you ever tried keto ratios?
I did, yeah. So that was a few years back now. I did get into nutritional ketosis quite a few times. The only thing I had with it was the protein issue. So, like I said before, like the ketogenic state is demand driven. So you don't have a high influx of glucose in your bloodstream, whether that be through direct carbohydrate intake or gluconeogenesis. So what I found was I just couldn't eat enough protein. I was never really satiated. And also, you got to be careful of some of the plant antinutrients in a lot of ketogenic diets. So they're eating things like very fibrous vegetables, which have a lot of things in it which aren't particularly useful for the gut microbiome. People argue it is, but they sort of say, oh, to get a balanced, well-populated gut microbiome, you have to eat a mixed diet, and it's like it's not cause and effect. It doesn't prove causality. It's just a suggestion based on like single studies which aren't comparative. They're just, oh, it must be that way.
Mm.
And also your gut microbiome is just affected by what you eat anyway. So if you're adapted to eating meat, that's how your gut microbiome will reflect. So
Totally. If you don't mind, I'd like to circle a little more into bodybuilding. This has been great talking about health and benefits of having a meat-based diet. In terms of your contest prep, refeeds, are those anything? Is that something that you incorporate?
Generally speaking, I've always had quite a linear process. So just decreasing energy intake as time goes on. I think there is a place, and I'd say it's when your energy intake sits so low that you end up having to add additional exercise on top of what you're already doing. That's when it might be beneficial to try a refeed sort of thing. So just about stabilizing your leptin levels, and usually that occurs by having 2 to 3 days of, a maintenance caloric based diet. But just doing a single day refeed doesn't always do the trick. So I'd suggest people just do it a weekend, for example, and use that as an advantage. So advantage to sort of eat more with family, for example, or on special occasions.
Okay. Yeah, I tend to do, I'll try to be in like a 500 calorie a day deficit for most of the week, and then do one day where my protein is insanely high, like basically as much as I can eat, like 600 or maybe even 700 grams. And I try to keep it super, super lean, keep the fats low so I'm not storing fat, because I know my insulin is going to be higher from it. Man, I'll just be full and huge and dry the next day, man. And I think it dries you out, because it takes a lot of water, a lot of stomach acids to digest all that meat. That was something that my coach and my posing coach both told me, is that if you want to dry out, eat a lot of meat.
It does seem to have some sort of diuresis effect.
Yeah. Do you get?
I'm not sure the mechanism.
Super thirsty the more that meat that you eat.
Yeah, I did, unless it's coupled with the higher fat. I don't know if you've heard of metabolic water. So it's what people don't realize is fat contains water as well. So when you lose weight, you can lose X amount of weight and X amount of weight, but it'll always be fat and water associated with it. So when you intake fat and the molecules break apart, you actually end up taking in H2O. So that's real fat, the fat intake. So it goes back to what we mentioned earlier about the indigenous tribes. They ate high fat diets, generally speaking.
Yeah.
So that's how they weren't, needing rainwater all the time. There's people that have been out into the sort of like tropic environments where these people live, and they're sort of bringing their like canisters of like 2 liters of water for like a hike, and they're just running around, jumping off trees and stuff, climbing things, without drinking a single ounce of water. So I think there's an adaptive mechanism there, because otherwise we wouldn't have survived as humans. Imagine you're not in an area with no rainfall in the desert. You had to survive somehow.
High fat diets. Yeah. You mean they weren't eating kale all the time? That's not where they're getting their nutrients from? Your peak week, did that look anything different, or did you basically just eat the same thing every day and just like same sodium, same water, all that, just right up through your show?
It's all the same. I'd say my diet does seem to be particularly high in sodium compared to a lot of people. Thinking about it, I would guess it's around about 15 grams per day. Potassium intake was around, I believe, 5,000 milligrams to 6,000 milligrams. I believe there is a mineral balance you need to sort of adhere to, which comes to like advanced nutrition, which a lot of people probably don't need to worry too much about if they're eating like an appropriate diet. But I do believe that the more sodium you have, the more sparing it is on other electrolytes. So I basically kept my diet the same, except for the last 2 days, I believe, I increased carbohydrate intake from nothing basically to, I believe it's about 240 on the first day, then 360 on the second day.
Really?
Yeah, I don't need an awful lot for some reason. But
And this is like
just me.
This is like the day, like 2 days before the show, or what?
Yeah.
Oh, so you'll go 6 months with no carbs, and then all of a sudden have some carbs a couple days before the show.
It seemed that, yeah, pretty much.
Huh.
I'd add them in and out sporadically as occasions popped up, sort of thing. But generally, that was my diet. Yeah.
You didn't get any like weird water retention, or your body kind of react to it because you haven't had them for so long?
I'd say I did get some distension in my gut, which was affected in my last showing. I'd say, generally speaking, I look and appear driest and best about 2 days after a carb up. So ideally in the future, if I was competing, say on a Saturday, maybe Tuesday, Wednesday, carb up, maybe a bit higher, then back to my normal diet to rid myself of the excess water. It's very individual though. I mean, that's just me. Some pro bodybuilders, they'll do thousands of grams of carbs every day for the last week. It's so individual.
Oh man, I'd spill over like crazy if I did that. Okay. Yeah, I'm starting to notice that, sodium manipulation used to be a real thing on peak weeks. And it seems that science is just showing that it's not worth it at all. And anymore, I mean, my coach was just like, if you're craving salt, eat salt. That's your body's way of telling you that you need it. It shuttles nutrients in your muscle cells. It's important for keeping water in your muscle cells. And so sodium manipulation isn't anything that we ever really did on peak week, nor is anything that I teach either, because I mean, you're stressed about enough other things. It's like put your mental energy and your focus on the things that matter, like your posing, your tan. I mean, like everything, your conditioning. Sodium, it's not worth it. I don't even think it works.
It's more worry than what it's worth. Yeah. As long as you get your posing and your tan right, I think you can't go too far wrong. And if you're in shape, you're in shape. So you don't need to do all these weird tricks to sort of look better.
Do you do any water manipulation on your peak week?
Not at all, no. So my intake was, I believe it's about 6 liters a day, maybe. But I just require a lot for some reason. But saying, obviously, if I have high sodium, I'm going to need more water to sort of flush it out.
Yeah.
But when I was doing a carb-based diet, in previous shows, I found I was drinking about 9 liters a day. So I was actually more thirsty, having more carbohydrate. From that, you obviously get the associated, gut distension, bloatedness, stomach discomfort. So that's not too pleasant. So that's quite a nice benefit as well when you're eating a big meal and you don't feel horrible for it.
Yeah. What do you eat on show day?
Show day. I believe I did some well cooked down potatoes in the morning. I generally don't eat a lot on show day.
Yeah.
I think by minimizing the sort of variables, by just not adding anything to what you got, that might disrupt it. I wouldn't say eat nothing, but just eat light. Don't eat a lot.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. So basically enough to fill out and just kind of top off and everything, and not be hungry, but not too much to where you're bloated and
pretty much
spill over.
Yeah. Having like rice cakes with peanut butter an hour before you get on stage isn't going to do anything at all. Your digestive process is somewhere between 6 and 12 hours. So if you're not doing something within 6 and 12 hours, it's not going to benefit your body. It's like hearsay. It's like an old wives' tale: rice cakes, peanut butter, jelly sort of thing.
Yeah. Now you did open bodybuilding, seems to be what you're strongest for, but due to your injuries, you were saying on your last interview that you might be focusing more on men's physique now.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go more towards that direction. I mean, I still have legs like a bodybuilder, but just not to the same standard, because I'm more of a fan of the classic era of bodybuilding, when body's a bit more like Arnold's, where you have a larger upper body but strong legs, but not huge legs. Yeah. I think nowadays it's become more popular with more squatty, shorter bodybuilders who are like 5'7". They've got short legs. They're like 35, 40 inches round sort of thing. but they just look so big, they're too big for their body.
Yeah.
I think because they set the standard in that way, that's the way everyone's followed. So everyone wants legs like Tom Platt sort of thing, don't they? So
I want legs like Tom Platt's too, man.
I
I'm
think we
not
all
going
did.
to
Yeah, but I think the standard's been set a certain way. So.
Who's your favorite bodybuilder of all time?
Cedric McMillan by landslide, I think.
Good choice.
Yeah, he's a tall guy like me. He's got quite a good attitude to him. I remember when we're going to an expo in England called the Body Power Expo, and he was going to the loo. And he came back, and I was waiting for him to finish, sort of thing, because there weren't any cubicles through. Then he sort of goes, "Do you smell that?" I was like, I burst out laughing. Like, he's got a good sense of humor, and he's very personable, and takes time to sort of speak to people, which I think is quite nice. Because a lot of bodybuilders have egos as they get bigger. Particularly sometimes once they achieve a certain level, it's like they're too good to talk to other people. So I don't like that sort of attitude.
We can edit this out if need be. Would you mind talking about drug use in bodybuilding?
Yeah, sure. I was waiting for you to ask that. What would you like to know specifically?
Have you used them? Are there a place for them in your contest prep protocol? How much is enough? How much is too enough? How much is too much?
Yeah, so I can say from what I've seen, people that if I word things there, people I know that compete, they are using between 2 grams per week and 2.5 grams of gear per week. Bear in mind, 1 milliliter is measured.
That's total everything. Like after you figure testosterone and then whatever anabolics are on top of that.
Yeah, so it's everything. I probably fall between the 1 to 1.5 pre-contest grammage sort of thing. I find if you use more, it doesn't do more. I think I think your protein synthesis is only a certain level.
Yeah,
it's elevated, but it just plateaus at certain points. So I think you're getting diminishing returns by adding more. People inevitably do that because they can't match their drug protocol with their training, their diet adherence. So I think like before, that's just a crutch to make up for something else that might be lacking. So the more you use, the more ancillary medications you have to use to sort of prevent side effects. So a lot of people suffer from bad lipid panels, high blood triglycerides, things of that nature, liver damage, kidney health problems. And that's just associated with use of a lot of oral steroids. I do think I think at a local level, it's probably not needed. It depends on the level of the local level. So from what I've seen over in England, the local level of competitors is much higher than it is, say, in Wisconsin or something in the States, because you've got a large population of people, 68 million, competing in the size of one maybe of your American states. So it's a lot more competitive. You've got a large gene pool per amount of shows sort of thing. And I think a lot of that goes into the fact that genetics play a big part in it as well. Some people they use gear and it doesn't seem to affect them that much. Some people it does. You can oftentimes tell who does and doesn't just by the color of their skin. Enough if they're bright red, puffy, they leave indentations on their arms when if they touch their arms. It is white. It can be high blood pressure, and that's not a normal thing for a 20-year-old bodybuilder to have of thing. So you can often see it on people, but I think most of the negative consequences are probably from the ancillary use, so Arimidex, letrozole, Arimocin, Novodex, all those sort of things. Trying to think there's probably loads of other ones, but they're only using more because they're pushing the envelope of everything else. It just seems a shame because it's just more cost as well in your pocket. You might be better off spending that money on organic beef or something, or a water filtration system for your house. But I think, yeah, I think people miss the mark a lot, I think, and they overdo it. We could talk about supplements if you want as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. I guess a couple more questions that I have on the gear aspect of it. So would that be like if you're doing a gram of gear, would it be like 500 milligrams of a testosterone, like short ester, and then just whatever anabolic on top of that?
So years prior, I've done generally about 500 milligrams testosterone coupled with maybe masteron, trenbolone, about 200 to 300 milligrams.
Mm-hmm.
As of recent, I've noticed that, at least the more reading I've done, bulking tends to work better with drugs like decadroberlin because it's a pure anabolic, whereas things like trenbolone they're anabolic, but they're more anti-catabolic based. There's obviously a lot of negative health implications of using that drug, so that's why they say don't use it for more than 6 to 8 weeks, or
it's amazing. Sort of it's amazing seeing guys cut on trenbolone, though. It's like they'll be getting bigger and stronger, and their bench is going up, and they're getting shredded at the same time. It's like, how is that humanly possible?
Yeah. When I look back and think, you're stabbing yourself with things and putting things in your body for the sake of plastic trophy. It seems a bit odd,
mm-hmm.
But then you think, well, you love it. You love looking better every week. It gives you that instant gratification. It takes a while. I mean, I've been doing it for 13 years, but it does give you gratification. Every now and then I might look in the mirror, maybe for a handful of times in my lifetime, but I thought, yeah, I look quite good. But
mm-hmm.
It's all worth it for that, I think. At least for me.
My wife and I are both equally concerned about trend in particular. Of all the research, we've been researching this pretty heavily. We've been coaching some athletes that are on gear. I have yet to cross that bridge, but I don't know. We'll see how this season goes. Just doing everything the way that I've always done it. But trend seems to be one that's particularly concerning. It just there's a lot of there's so many side effects, a lot of long-term health consequences that I don't know if they're rumors or if they are actually true. But isn't that super hard on your heart? Like, can it shorten your lifespan? Is there any long-term consequences that you're concerned about?
100%. Yeah, I would suspect there's a lot of long-term health implications of it, and that's why it comes back around to what you mentioned earlier about like having blood tests. We're not just testing your full blood count, liver, renal profile, but also having actual scans of your heart. What does it look like? It's a lot left ventricle? Has it got hypertrophy? Is there enlargement of your kidneys? Is your liver scarred? Things like that. I think people say they do blood tests, but they actually don't. Because if you saw them, if they did do them and they were good, they'll post it.
Yeah.
So I think there's that problem as well. Like, you should be proud if you use performance enhancing drugs and you've got good blood profile. But I think that's something just people don't hit the mark on, really.
Mm-hmm. It seems like people are using way more gear now than they were. I mean, like even Tom Platz, he was only using, I think he said about 500 milligrams of gear total, even in his prime. And like, wow, like I know so many NPC competitors that will never look like Tom Platz and that don't train half as hard, and they're using everything, just thinking that just because it's a drug, it's going to make them better. And I'm like, that's not true. Like, you can look great without any gear, and does the gear help? Yeah. But that's the key, is it helps. I mean, it's a supplement. I think it should be viewed as a supplement. I think it should be viewed as creatine, BCAAs, just anything else, because it's going to make you better, but it's not going to replace the diet by any means. It's not going to replace the training at all. And let's just be honest, this is kind of the sad thing that nobody really wants to talk about is, hey man, the best thing you can do in this sport is pick good parents.
It really is. Yeah. Are you familiar with Boston Lloyd?
No.
So he passed away very recently, so I want to be quite sensitive towards this topic. But he was a bodybuilder from the States, and he used, I believe it was something like 13 grams of gear a week, if not more.
13 grams?
13, so like 2 grams a day, near enough. That was a mixed things. The problem is, if you're using that much, you've got to question where are you putting it? For one, it's not going to fit in many muscle bellies, and also, what quality is it? You know, I tried to get the pharmaceutical grade things where possible. It's a lot easier here in the UK than it is in the US. The legality of it here is fine. It's just selling it, obviously, which I don't do. So, people say, "Oh, it's illegal." I think, well, it's for the person selling it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the rules are a bit stricter here, and the government seems to be cracking down on it more lately. And a lot of it may be because, I mean, this bodybuilder's dying. I mean, like there's people that are just flat out 13 grams a day. Wow.
1 in 10 American collegiate athletes use anabolic steroids. That's self-confessed.
I would say it's more than that.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. But you think 1 in 10, say 1 in 10 kids that you go to school with. So say you got a class of 30, that's 3 kids that are going to be using something. How many of them are going to be Mr. Olympia? How many of them are going to be top athletes? You got to question that as well. But like myself, I'm not an Olympian, so you got to think, why am I doing it? But that's when passion kind of overlaps, I think.
How long are your show preps? How many weeks?
I prefer shorter ones with a more challenging intensity. I'm a bit masochistic in that sense that I prefer to do 6 to 8 or 6 to 10 week preparations. Depends on your start point as well. Wow. I think for you, you're doing 24 weeks or something.
I'm doing 24 weeks. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that should be sufficient for yourself, and you shouldn't really feel much different throughout it. It's just when you get to maybe 6% body fat below, that's when you're going to be, struggling. But I'd rather do that all quickly. I don't want to suffer for a long period of time.
So if you're okay, because I'm trying to think, if you're doing a 6 to 8 week prep, isn't a standard cycle of trend like usually 6 to 12 weeks? Like that'd be like your whole prep, right?
Yeah, about that.
So you're on trend your entire prep?
I'd say so. I usually add it in the last portion of it, maybe the last 2/3 of it.
Okay.
Maybe 8 weeks out. I find there's like I find you get like digestive issues with it. You get more acid reflux. Once you start to use it, it sort of builds up your system. So I think sometimes problem with a lot of drugs is that people wait for the side effects to occur to assume if it's good quality gear or not, but they should be using the mirror more than the side effects associated.
Yeah. Okay, so you're stacking the testosterone and then the tren on top of that, and then do you throw on like a Masteron or an Anavar or anything just to maintain some fullness and some dryness like those last couple of weeks for that?
I'm quite a big fan of Masteron, actually.
You are?
I find that's quite a good medication.
Now that's not too many injections all at the same time.
No, I tend to split it up probably do about 3 times a week. I've been off all performance drugs now for I believe about 3 months. But my weight hasn't dropped for it at all. And my strength's exactly the same. Cool. I think that comes to like the residual fact that I've been training for so long. I'm near my maximal level naturally anyway. So
right. For you, it seems to be it's a performance enhancing drug. It's not a performance replacing drug. And you see guys that blow up and then they lose everything, and they blow up and they lose everything. And I think there seems to me to be a difference between being a natural athlete and adding in some things here and there to become better and to keep progressing, and then keeping those gains when you get off the gear versus being on everything and then just taking a year off and then being on everything again. There seems to be a big difference between the two.
Yeah, I'd agree. Yeah.
Okay. Do you get off of test before the show for water retention? I know a lot of guys do that, and that's a pretty controversial one. Just kind of like creatine. It's like, do you run it up through the show? Do you not?
Yeah, I cut it out at least a week before. It's still going to be in your system at high levels throughout. But I believe mostly water retention is more of an immediate, acute kind of inflammatory response. So you stab your muscles with a needle, it's going to inflame. If you're doing a glutes, it's going to be slightly blurred out by the definition. So I think as long as the inflammation's gone, it shouldn't be too much of an issue. And I'd question if you're holding water from using testosterone, are you using too much? Because say Arnold used maybe testosterone, he wouldn't hold water. He'd look dry as anything, no sort of bloated gut or anything. So I think just keeping it within the right range is probably more important than when not to cut it out.
Are you taking a short ester or a long ester of test?
I use all long esters. Yeah.
Oh wow! So that week is, because isn't the half-life like 14 days? I mean, because it's definitely still in your system by then.
I believe the nanthate is 8 days. Your clearance rate of drugs is very different depending on genetics. I seem to be quite good at clearing a lot of medications. For example, if I take a painkiller, it doesn't last 4 hours like it's meant to. It lasts about 2 to 3. So I think you got to take that into consideration as well if you're using different things.
Mm-hmm. What's the worst side effect that you've ever had from taking any of these extracurricular supplements?
I think once I lost a show from it. I wouldn't say a friend basically gave me injectable Winstrol. Don't use it. It's I should have just drank the vial or something.
So Winstrol can be oral or injectable.
Yes, I believe it's a water-based injectable. He only gave me a few of them, but I had one injection in my thigh, which it swelled out a bit. It left like a red mark. I think that affected my placing a few years back, but I don't know. It wasn't too obvious. Yeah, that's as bad as it really gets. Other than night sweats, that's the main thing I think is quite annoying.
From Winnie?
Just any anabolic substance.
Oh yeah, I've heard trenbolone is can really mess up your sleep.
Tren's the worst for it, yeah. So that's something you ideally want to do more shorter esters so you can get out of your system as soon as possible, sort of thing. But then there's an argument that longer esters are more balanced in your system, so you don't get the same side effects.
Any like anxiety or anger or anything?
I'd say I suffer with anxiety quite a bit, generally speaking. Wouldn't say anger. I'd say I think you have less tolerance. That's what I think a lot of people would probably agree with that use it. Your sort of patience for things is a lot less. You're less sociable, I think. I don't know the mechanism on how that works, but I do think it's quite obvious. So when you see competitors backstage, that oftentimes they're not very friendly, quite rude a lot of the time. So you just think, is that wise? You just leave them to their own devices, sort of thing.
Yeah. Cool. Appreciate you talking about this, brother. It's I totally respect how open you are about everything. I think this is something that I would like to see talked about more, to be honest. And I've done shows that are tested. I've done shows that are non-tested, and I wish that there was less politics in the entire bodybuilding community, and that everybody would see eye to eye and get along and celebrate what we have in common, and not judge what somebody takes and what somebody doesn't take. For a quote unquote natural athlete, what does that even mean, to look at somebody that's on gear and be like, oh, they're less of an athlete than me? It's like, if anything, they're kind of more of an athlete than you, because they train harder because they can. And I'm not taking anything away from someone that's natural or for someone that's not, but it's like there's too much of a stigma and too much of a an unrealistic view of what the gear does based on what I've been able to see. So anyway, I just wanted to tell you that I really much appreciate everything you just shared. That was extremely helpful. So thanks.
That's fine. Yeah, not a lot of people will talk about it. It's more common in sort of British podcasts to speak about it just because of the legality. In the States, I don't follow many things where it's talked about. But I will say people sort of seem to escape the fact that Olympic athletes use the same things bodybuilders use.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe not to the same doses oftentimes or the same combinations, but they are using clenbuterol, they are using thyroid, they are using, Winstrol, Turinabol, growth hormone, IGF-1, insulin. They're all using these things. But
how is it that there's more and more world records that get broken every year in every sport, and yet the human race isn't like getting genetically better or anything? If anything, we're getting worse, but yet records still keep getting broken. I mean, there's more happening than what people talk about. And you look at like Lance Armstrong, and on the Joe Rogan podcast, Joe Rogan said it beautifully. I mean, you're talking about a sport where every single athlete is on PEDs and everybody is using the same stuff. And so obviously they're just gonna focus in on Lance and bust him, and they did it. And it's like, if somebody else was doing better than Lance, then they would have done the same thing with them. And did he lie? Yeah. But I mean, part of me is like, you're talking about an alpha male athlete that has to win. And like, that's what this guy's purpose and focus is on. And, Tom Platz said it great too. It's like, he's gonna, like, he'll die if he doesn't win. Like, he was made to win, Yeah.
There's a lot more things coming out as time goes on that people aren't aware of. There's different peptides now people use, but things like tennis players, that Maria Sharapova about 5 years ago, she was caught using mechano growth factor, I believe. You've got to think, well, they're using it in women's tennis, It's not like they're using it in Olympic sprinting, Usain Bolt, they're using it in all sorts of sports. Probably even like golf, wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah. What about other supplements? What other supplements do you take? Creatine, BCAAs? I mean, do you see any value in stuff like that? Glutamine? The basics.
In isolation, some amino acids seem to have some benefit. For example, taurine is almost like an immune modulator. Also modulates just generally every hormetic system. So your blood glucose, blood pressure, your heart rate, all sorts of things. Glutamine, useful for digestive health, helps repair the gut lining. I think oftentimes people don't use the right dosage. But I'd obviously taper up the dosage based on what you think would be an initial start point. Then other supplements might be a B complex. I have something called the MTHFR gene. So I've done a few genetic tests on myself through different labs, and they found that I can't, I'm not sure on the right terminology, but I can't metabolize basically folic acid and convert it into methylfolate. And that's important in like an energy system, basically. So basically my methylation is quite low. So oftentimes people with low methylation have to have more riboflavin, which is like vitamin B2, or they have to have more choline. So I'd have a higher requirement of the egg intake per day. So it does have to be tailored towards your own needs. It's no good saying everyone should be on magnesium, everyone should be on creatine. It's very specific, but I'd say I do use creatine as well, 10 grams per day.
Monohydrate?
Taurine. Pardon?
Monohydrate?
Yeah, monohydrate usually. That seems to be like the cheapest and most cost-effective way of doing it.
Most research.
Although the price has gone up a lot recently. It's now, I think it's something like 40 or 50 pounds per kilo, so $100 a kilo or something stupid.
Yeah. I use a supplement called CGP, which is creatine glycerol phosphate. I get a drier and a harder look, and I get more explosive lifts out of it. So I'll notice it the same day, where I don't get the same benefit from creatine monohydrate. My coach recommended it to me, so I've been on this for years.
You get non-responders to different amino acids.
Some people respond great to it and some people don't, which is why I love to sample it out, because I sell it too. And so I'm like, all right, so like try it. And if you notice a significant improvement, feel free to buy it. But if not, then, maybe you're one of the non-responders. But we've been out of stock for several months now. There's a global shortage on creatine at the moment, which is why all the costs are skyrocketing. And I'm talking to my sales rep like every week. I'm like, when are we getting more? And when are we getting more? And he's like, it's still going to be another month. It's still going to be another month. This is ridiculous, man. And so I was out and like, I was mad because like, this is the best supplement I got, man. This is the best performance enhancing supplement that I'm putting in my body right now is creatine glycerol phosphate. And I'm like, bro, if I'm out of this, like I'm worried, man. And so he he sent me a package. He texted me and he goes, I'm sending you something that you like in the mail. And I'm like, oh, if this is what I think it is, I'm going to be amped, because I just ran out of creatine. And sure enough, a 6-inch by 6-inch by 6-inch box showed up. And I'm like, I know exactly what's in there. And I opened it up and there was a note from the CEO of Metabolic Nutrition and our sales rep that both of them signed. They said, hey, Colt, we found this and we found this. This is our last CGP at corporate, and we wanted you to have it. Good luck at your show. And I was like, I love you guys. I'm not even using full dose, man. I'm using a half dose every day because I don't know if I'm going to run out before they actually get more in stock. But I was like, man, these are the coolest supplement reps in the entire world. And I'm a client for life. So.
I must admit, there's a lot of excitement to have when you start a new supplement or you find something that works quite well for you. But at the end of the day, it does all come down to what your diet's like and how that affects everything else. Mm-hmm. If you're sleeping well, recovering well, a lot of these things won't do anything for you. But they're almost like a patch for everything else. So I sometimes use digestive enzymes to help increase the amount that I might be able to sort of metabolize efficiently.
I use digestive enzymes.
You just say when it reaches your small intestine, the molecules are smaller. So basically, you can have less gut permeability where things leak out into the rest of your bloodstream. That's something I take quite a lot of thought into. And given that I worked in a health food shop before with lots of different supplements, I mean, probably about 1,000 different products at least, with different ingredients as well. I found often people were looking for like the miracle cure. Then you'd ask them about their diet and they'd say, oh, I try not to eat too much meat. Like over here, that's like a catchphrase sort of thing. It's like, oh, I try to eat less red meat, like it's a good thing.
Yeah.
But the reality is the World Health Organization has actually reversed that statement. They say the opposite. They say, it's got good associations with like the Hong Kong study sort of thing. I found they're always looking for like the miracle pill. And it comes down to what your diet's like, generally speaking.
You mentioned taurine is something that you supplement. A high red meat diet is already pretty high in taurine. Do you take Clen before a show?
I do, and I find that taurine does help with the sort of associated cramps.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
I don't like using a lot of that. It can get your heart rate up a little bit. I find just using it sporadically on and off, so you don't have to use it all the time. But I do find taurine helps sort of regulate the sort of cramping and things like that.
Mm-hmm. Put maybe a little extra potassium too.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. Cool. All right, brother. Well, wow, what a talk. This has been amazing, man. We need to have this is definitely 2 episodes worth for our show, but we need to do a third one here at some point. Man, thanks for the wisdom, man. Like this is like you have no idea how happy I was with my friend Pilar. She's out of California and she's a listener to our show and kind of part of the community, but she sent me this podcast of you on that last show and was just like, you need to talk to this guy. He is just like you. And I was just like, after listening to it, I was like, oh man, like if I could have just like a couple hour conversation with him, that would be so helpful, because there's just like, I literally don't know anybody else that does this the way that you and I are. So I want to talk a lot more, man.
Where I live, it's not. In England, it's even less prevalent. There's perhaps 2 people in the public figure that maybe do it. So one's Phil Escott. He knows a lot about diet, basically.
You're talking carnivore bodybuilding?
No, I've not met any, I don't think, other than perhaps yourself.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, I think that's a good stopping point. Ready to wrap up?
Yeah.
If you are. I'm gonna go hit some legs and some back, and I'm amped after this conversation, man. I'm just gonna ride this motivation out right now for the next for the next couple hours. And
brilliant! Yeah, it should be good. Glad we went into all the topics we did, because not a lot of people would.
Yeah,
I think if you target that well in your caption sort of thing, that people will hop onto it. I think.
Mm-hmm. We'll be talking a lot. Send me your address.
Yeah, keep in touch. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Like I said, like I think I don't think that we met by accident. I really don't. I think that you and I are gonna do something really cool together. I don't know what it is yet, but you and me we're the pioneers, man. We're putting carnivore. Yeah. We're putting carnivore bodybuilding on the map together.
Across the ocean, yeah.
Absolutely.
Thanks, everybody, for joining us in this entire episode. If you found this particularly helpful or inspiring or entertaining, we ask that you would please share this with a friend. That'd be awesome. We'd love to hear what you think of the show, so any ratings or reviews that you have for us are very much appreciated. We do have a new episode every Saturday morning, so please subscribe so you don't miss those. Thanks a lot. God bless you. Bye-bye.